It had been a long, stressful day at work. I remember glancing at the clock on the dashboard of my car as I pulled into the driveway, 9:23 p.m. The porch light flickered just slightly in the summer breeze, casting shadows across the flower beds I hadn't had the energy to tend in weeks. My husband, Paul, was out of town on a business trip to Chicago, and our two children were spending the weekend with my sister in Maine. I had planned on an empty house and some much-needed silence. Instead, I got a call from my younger brother's best friend, Ethan. Ethan and my brother Josh had grown up together. They were practically family. I'd known Ethan since he was a lanky, shy kid with braces and a stutter. Now he was 28, confident, and working in a different state, but every so often he'd come through Boston for business. He called me that evening, his voice shaky and unusually uncertain. "Rachel, I hate to ask, but do you mind if I crash at your place tonight?" he asked. "My Airbnb canceled last minute, and all the nearby hotels are fully booked because of some tech conference." I hesitated. I liked Ethan. He was polite, respectful, and had always treated me like a big sister, but the idea of having anyone over while Paul was gone made me just a little uneasy. Still, I couldn't say no. "Of course," I said. "The guest room's clean. You remember where it is." He arrived around 10, his luggage in tow, wearing that familiar sheepish grin. I greeted him with a quick hug, poured him a glass of water, and offered leftovers from dinner, which he politely declined. We chatted briefly in the kitchen, catching up. He asked about the kids, my job as a middle school guidance counselor, and even my aging golden retriever, Max, who lay asleep by the pantry. Ethan looked tired, too. His dark hair was tousled, and there were deep circles under his eyes. He told me his flight had been delayed for hours, and he'd barely slept the night before. I showed him to the guest room, left fresh towels on the dresser, and said goodnight. The house settled into its usual quiet, save for the occasional creak of the old floorboards. I curled up in bed with a book, but I couldn't quite focus. Something about Ethan's tone had unsettled me. He'd seemed off, not just tired, but distracted, almost anxious. I dismissed it as stress or travel fatigue, and eventually drifted into a light sleep. It must have been around midnight when I woke up. Not suddenly, but in that odd, slow way when something feels off. There was a faint sound, like a soft knock, or maybe footsteps. I turned over and reached for my phone. 12:03 a.m. I got up quietly and slipped on my robe. The hallway was dark, lit only by the glow from the night light near the stairs. As I stepped toward the kitchen, I paused. The guest room door was open. I could see a sliver of light, like from a phone screen. That's when I heard a sound I'll never forget, Ethan's voice. Not loud, but tight with emotion. "I shouldn't have come here." I stood frozen. My first instinct was to retreat, to give him space, but something held me there. I stepped closer, my foot brushing against the doorframe. Ethan was sitting on the edge of the guest bed, hunched over, phone in hand. I caught a glimpse of the screen, an email with the subject line, "Final warning, contract termination." I knocked gently on the open door, and he jumped. "Sorry," I said softly. "I heard something. Are you okay?" He blinked at me, clearly embarrassed, then put the phone down and rubbed his face with both hands. "Yeah," he said. "I didn't mean to wake you. Stuff with work's been a mess. I think I'm getting fired." That's when everything came out. He didn't just think he was getting fired, he knew it. There had been a project he was leading that went off track, and even though the mistake wasn't fully his fault, he was the one taking the fall. The email had come through just before midnight. They were terminating his contract, effective immediately. No severance. No recommendations. He looked completely shattered. I sat beside him on the bed, unsure what to say. We sat in silence for a minute before he finally whispered, "I don't know what I'm going to do. I moved for this job. I built everything around it, and now it's just gone." "Ethan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "you're one of the most capable people I know. This isn't the end." He gave me a sad smile. "I know you mean well, Rachel, but right now it feels like the end." There was so much pain in his voice, I felt it deep in my chest. He looked down, his fingers gripping the edge of the bed. I placed a hand on his shoulder, just a simple gesture, but it felt like something shifted in that moment. His eyes met mine, glassy with unshed tears, and for a second, the silence said everything. Then he laughed, a short, bitter laugh. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't be dumping all this on you." "You're not dumping anything," I said. "You're allowed to have a moment." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Thanks for letting me stay here tonight. I don't know what I'd have done otherwise." I stayed with him for a while longer, talking about anything and everything, books we'd read, childhood memories, the time he and Josh broke my mom's porch swing and blamed it on the neighbor's kid. Slowly, the tension eased. Eventually, I convinced him to lie down and get some sleep. But sleep didn't come easy for either of us. I returned to my room and lay there staring at the ceiling, haunted by the look in his eyes. The house was quiet again, but something had changed. Ethan wasn't just a house guest anymore. He was someone carrying a weight that I couldn't ignore. The next morning, he was already up and dressed when I came downstairs. He was sipping coffee, Max at his feet. "Hey," he said with a tired smile. "Thanks again for everything last night. I didn't mean to scare you." "You didn't scare me," I said gently. "But don't vanish either. If you need help figuring things out, I'm here." He nodded, his eyes grateful. "I don't have a plan yet, but I'll figure it out. I always do." Over the next few weeks, Ethan stayed in town. At first, just a few days while he sorted things with his employer. But those days turned into a couple of weeks. He helped around the house, played video games with my kids when they returned, and even fixed a leaking pipe Paul had been putting off for months. Paul came back from his trip and met Ethan for the first time in years. It was a little awkward, but Ethan kept it respectful. He never overstepped. He was just there. A quiet presence during a strange, transitional time. Eventually, he got a new job offer. A good one. In Seattle. He sat us down to tell us the news, and I could see how much it hurt him to leave, even though it was the right move. On the day he left, I walked him to his car. He turned to me, hesitating. "I meant what I said that night," he told me. "You saved me, not just with a place to sleep, but by being kind when I didn't know how to ask for it." I hugged him tightly, like a sister would, and stepped back with a nod. "You'll do great in Seattle, and you always have a place here if you need it." He smiled. "Same to you." As his car disappeared down the road, I realized that night had changed us both. What happened at midnight wasn't about fear or scandal, it was about human vulnerability. About how, sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can anchor someone when they're at their lowest. And though the house returned to its quiet routine, it wasn't the same. It was filled with the memory